Hello, my name is Paul Laidler, and this video is to bring you up to date with some recent changes in ClearWin Plus. We'll be looking at some features in Plato which help you to write programs in ClearWin Plus. We'll be looking at a new design mode and also a new toolbar. So let's begin with Plato and a very simple program which first of all, we'll look at the clip library. If we select View and then the clip library, then we find that we get some clips for ClearWin Plus. Let's, for example, choose Window Caption and double click. Then we get the text clip appearing in the code, and we can do that for all kinds of different components in ClearWin Plus. Alright, so that's the first thing. Next, let's look at the F1 key. This is also not new but of interest. So if we use the F1 key in the keyboard, then by placing a position within a format code, pressing F1, then we come up with help on that particular format code. Alright, so let's go on now to look at the pop-up menu. And this, first of all, if we this is a new feature. If we place the cursor in a position just after the opening bracket of a WinIO statement, and now if we right click on the mouse, and then we get a new pop-up menu which provides us with an almost complete list of all of the format codes that are available. So let's, for example, we want to let's select one of the buttons, BT, click on that, and the code appears in the text at that point. So that gives a very quick summary of all of the format codes that are available. Now let's finally look at options that we can get hold of. Suppose we add a new line here and put in %ww for window style. Then again F1 tells us about that, but we see that there are options available with this particular format code. Now if we begin to put in those options by putting in square brackets and then select a position just before the closing square bracket and right click, then we get a list of options for that particular format code. So here let's select, say, topmost, double click, and then that appears in the code. So all of these features together make it easier to create ClearWin Plus programs from within Plato. Alright, so moving on now to our next section, the design mode. This time we're going to start with our present example, and first of all we'll have a quick look to see what's in there. If we build it and run it, then here we find what we have to start off with. We've got our new caption which appears. We have a background color of grey to the window. We have some text, the background color of white for a multi-line edit control %RE, and then a couple of buttons at the end. All of this is just in one line, there's no form feeds or line feeds in this. Right, so close that down and let's use this new design mode. And the way it works is that we use a new code, WI, which provides an identifier for that particular window. I'm just going to use the value 100 as the identifier in this case. Now with %WI we enter a design mode by putting in a tilde before the WI. Now if we build and run, we find that we have the same appearance, but now the window can be sized and items can be selected by grabbing them with the mouse, the left mouse click, holding it down and just moving the control to the position that we want. So here if we grab hold of the OK button, we move it down there, and grab hold of that one, move it down, and then we can size it, the window again. So with this design mode we have this facility to move items around, so we can move this, say, into the middle. Alright, so that's the basic idea, and with this design mode you'll see that there is a toolbar which appears above the window, which we can use to perform certain actions. Now, first of all, I'm going to hold down the control key and then click to select an item. That means that the item will now remain selected, and I can apply these different actions to the selected item. For example, I can position it against the left border, or against the right border, or I can center it. I can, with this facility, we can click and we can select more than one item, and we can align those two items, let's say, to the left. And the effect of that is to align the second one selected with the first one selected on the left. So here we could select that first, select that second, and align the second with the first. So there are various actions which are available. We might, for example, choose to select this button. We can actually make that button wider by holding down the control key and using the right arrow key to make it wider, or the left to make it narrower. Maybe go with the control key held down. I can make it not as high. Now suppose we wanted to make these two buttons, well, first of all we'll align the two buttons so that they're in the same top position, and then perhaps we could make them have the same width, but that one now of course is out, so we'll select that one and then that one, and we'll align them on the right. So we have all of these ways of moving items around, changing their sizes. And then also, if instead of using this toolbar, you could use a right click, and that gives you a pop-up menu doing with the same actions. So in this way we'll see that the window can be designed, the positions can be set up. And as we're doing that designing, you notice that the caption changes with providing information about the position and the ID of the current selected item. But we can do all of this, and we can maybe even select more than one item and drag more than one item in that way. Okay, when we're satisfied with the design that we have, we then can close that window, and we're provided with an option to save the design data. In addition to that, there's an accelerator key which you can use to save at an earlier point if you wish to. So now we have our design, and the result of that is the design is saved in a file which is alongside the executable file that we've been using. Finally, when we're happy with the design, we can remove the tilde and then build and run, and now the design is locked, so that we can use the control as it now appears in its locked state. So okay, that's the design, but now the final stage is that we would like to include that design in the executable rather than have it as a separate file. The file itself, let's have a look at it first of all, just to see what it looks like. It's if I just take the current path and open the file, then you'll find that it appears here alongside the executable, alongside the exe file. You've got an RCX file. That's the file that's been created by the design, and if we just open that and have a brief look at it, then we can compare the data there which has been provided with the information in our program. First of all, we can see the ID there for the window itself. That's the one I've chosen. We've got position here -1, which means that the position of the window is not stored, but the width and the height is stored and used. Then within the window we have %. That's representing the text because it doesn't have a format code. It appears as ... in the design in the RCX file. These are the IDs for the controls which are automatically generated by ClearWin+. Then you've got the position, XY position, the width and the height for each of these items. You find some text appears here corresponding to what that in the program, but this text is just for inspection. It doesn't actually feed back into the design. Now that RCX file is at the moment separate, but we'd like to include that as part of the executable. So we can do that as the final stage, and all we do is add the RCX file as of a source, and in this case we'll just put it at the end of the program. Now this time we will have to have a separate build in order to include that information into the executable. So we'll do a build. The resource compiler has been used to add the resource, and now when we run it, it will be the same, but in fact it will be using it won't be using the separate resource file. Now it'll be using runtime, it'll actually be using the embedded resource in the executable. So that's what we'll get now when we run it. Okay, so that's the basic idea, and with that we can design lots of our programs. In fact, any program which allows for a fixed position of all of the controls. If, for example, you wanted your own resizing window, then this probably wouldn't work, because you wouldn't get the resizing effect that you would want in those cases. Let's move on to another more sophisticated example, and this time here we have our program. I've already put in some %wi codes, but I've just commented those out initially. And this particular window, let's have a look to see what it does. We'll build it, run it, and see what's there. Well, it contains a tabbed control, and the tab control appears down here with %ps, and it has two sheets, and those. So this is the, if you like, the main window down here with a caption of tab control, %ps with handles for two separate sheets, sheet 1 and sheet 2. Now, sheet 1 appears up here, the caption %sh, the caption gives you the caption for the sheet. Within that first sheet we have an integer, some value text, and a %rd for an integer edit control. And the second sheet here, caption sheet 2, real value, and %rf for a real input value. So that's the basic window we want to design, and here we begin by adding our %wi to provide identifiers for each of the components. But in our design we'll start by just putting a tilde on the main window, and designing that part first. So if we build and run, and we can now change the size, let's make it a bit bigger. We can select it with the control key held down, and then increase the size. And now I'm going to press the shift key as well. That will increase the size by 10 pixels rather than just by 1. So I'm holding down the control and the shift, and now I'm just holding down the control key to do one at a time, and that's my new position and my new size. I'm happy with that, so let's close it and save it. Alright, now that the main window is set up, let's design the sheets separately. I put a tilde on one of the sheets. That's the same as putting a tilde on all of them. And now if I build and run, then we have now the facility to select a sheet, but within the sheets we can now select, let's select a couple of items, move them around. Move them down, let's to up as a center. Let's align them on the left. I'll leave it like that. That's our new position that we want, and here we'll leave those where they were, just for demonstration purposes. And now we'll close and save, and finally take off the tilde from all of the parts. We'll build and run, and now we have our finished design. That's the new position, and that's as it was. So now we have everything set up in the positions where we want it. Okay, so that's for the final stage, of course, would be to add our resource at the end. Now that all works fine. The only downside is that if at the end I suddenly find that I need to add a new control, then we have to do that fairly carefully, because the order is significant, because the ID for each control is assigned automatically. So there are two ways to change the design after it's been modified, and one is simply to put the new items at the end, because that won't affect anything that's already there. The other is that we can add new components just by using %CI for the item which has been added. So let's illustrate that here. I've just got some prepared text, and I'm going to add something at the very beginning. Maybe not in this example, perhaps we'll go back to the earlier example. It might be simpler to use. And suppose we go down to here and put in a new control by using %CI with an identifier which is going to be different from the automatic ones provided by ClearWin. And then if we go back to design mode, then it'll show us this new control without altering the position of the existing ones. Now this also illustrates a new format code, %GB, which has been added because you can now use a Microsoft group box in this context. ClearWin Plus itself has %OB and %CB for boxes, but they become largely redundant or ineffective in this design mode. But if instead you could put a single box around controls just by using %GB and resizing to the size that you want it within the design. So the %GB comes with a title for the box, which goes around or is intended to go around a group of controls within the window. Okay, so that's illustrates design mode, and we'll move on now to a look at the new toolbar. Right, so here's our next example, and it's probably simpler just to show you before anything else happens, to show you the results of what we have here. Here's the window produced, and let's see what the components are. Well, we have this is our new toolbar. At the moment you do have %TB, %IB, which are existing toolbars, but this new one, this %MB for a multi-button toolbar, is somewhat easier to set up and has more functionality than the old toolbars. You find it's presented here on this line with a %MB. So that's what we're looking at there. The rest of this is really just for illustration purposes and for this particular demonstration and for testing. We find here that we have %WW I've used. That goes with %PV for a pivot, and means that we can resize the window here. We also have, as well as the caption, we have some text which is presented in a monospaced font, and the text is here, which provides headings for an output window. The output window has a background color of white, and it's output using %CW for an embedded ClearWin window, which is simply for output from the program. Now that gives you the basic structure, and we need to look at the details for producing this toolbar. Okay, well, the toolbar comes with a number of components. In fact, they're mostly arrays. So let's look at some of the details. We'll find first of all that there is an asterisk here, which simply marks the first argument afterwards, the n, as the value to appear in that position. In other words, when there's a star, it reads the first argument, and the integer n is simply the total number of buttons in this particular toolbar. So normally we'd put in the value 9 here, but since it's a parameter, we'll put a star and an n as an argument. After that, we have two arrays which are required. The next array afterwards is optional. The two arrays provide you with an index in the button and a style. The button is made up of a number of bitmaps, and these, in this particular case, the bitmaps are provided by the control. They are standard bitmaps, and this button index provides an index into that list of button images. The button images are provided as a horizontal strip of bitmaps, one for each button, and the index provides the zero-based index into that horizontal strip of images. So this is the first button, the second, the third. Then we've got a -1 because the next one is going to be a separator, and the next button index, separator, and so on. So when we look at the list, this is the first button from the strip, the second button, the third, there's a separator, and so on. So then as well as the button index, we have a button style, and the button style, initially all of the elements in the array set to the style of button, and those are Microsoft parameters which are included in the header file windows.ins or in the corresponding module. And this particular value happens to be 0 in the parameters, and that it fills the array first of all, but then we have a separator which happens to have the value 4, that comes in at position 4 and at position 7 in the list. So those two need an index into the array, into the strip of buttons, and a style. Now with the tilde, we can add a state of each button, and here we've just set the state to be enabled, which is either enabled or grayed, and that again is a Microsoft value. And finally, so that's with the tilde, which is optional, and then you've got the caret represent to bring in a callback function, and for this particular control for %MB, there's only one callback for all of the buttons, and we'll see how that works in just a moment. So there we've got all of the basic components, and with that setup, at the moment we're using a particular set of standard images provided by Microsoft. Now we can change that set if we add the option here to the %MB, right click, then we'll find that there is available here an alternative option, and that view provides us with a different set of standard buttons. And now this is these are the buttons we get with the option view, and there's a third set which find is hist. It's short for history, and that is a web style set of buttons with an arrow and so on. And in fact, in this list there aren't enough images, so it's being filled out with blanks. And then go back to the standard set of images. We can, any one of those sets we can make large, and the result then is that we get 24 by 24 buttons instead of 16 by 16. Okay, then let's try one or two other things. Suppose we put in here bottom instead of leaving it blank. Then this time the buttons appear down below. The other option is to use it on the left, and you can have as many as 3 separate toolbars: top, bottom, left, one in each position, and no more than one in each position. Okay, so those are the basic options, and there are others which you can explore as you begin to use this new control. So that's our first example, which gives you the basic idea. As I've provided here a callback function, and as we run it at the moment, just the basic state, then you'll see the callback function is providing information about which button is being clicked. So you find in the callback that we're reading in callback reason, and we're getting hold of a ClearWin info value MB button, which is the number of the button that's been selected. And so in practice we would choose an action based on the button number. So this is button number 1. You see it here. That's the count of the number of times a message has been sent, and the type of the message, the value of the button number, and the return that's been used for this particular callback call. You notice that I've used a common block here to share data. In practice you would probably prefer to use a module, but this just makes it easier for me to show it here. So that's our basic example, and let's move on to something a little bit more sophisticated now. Our second example has more facilities in it. This time we've added help strings, and we've added a drop down button. Much of the remaining program is similar to before, but we have more facilities in here. Let's have a quick look at what it appears like. Build and run it. Here's the output, and we'll see the effect of the help strings here with providing tooltips for our toolbar. We'll see also that the style drop down has added an arrow to this particular button, and we'll see the effect of clicking on different buttons as we go across. So, okay, how does this work in practice? Well, first of all, the help strings are there's actually a do loop in this, which I'll explain the reason for that. It goes through the whole creation of the window twice just to illustrate what happens. Okay, the help string is provided in the usual way in the control, in that the control has a question mark here, and together with, normally the help strings are placed in square brackets. The help string would normally come in square brackets after the options, but the alternative is to use an @ symbol at that point, and to put the help string in the argument list at the end. And here is the list of help instructions for the buttons, and it starts off with a caret symbol, and that's my choice for separator, and then a list with separators used to provide the help strings. You notice there's two together, and that's simply for the separators, just to maintain the ordering, and there's another gap there for the two separators. So this particular toolbar uses tooltips always, and those are provided by one help string. The other feature which we can notice is that we have an option adjustable here, which enables the toolbar to be modified at runtime. So let's run it again and just see how that works. With the adjustable option, we can choose any item. Now hold down the shift key, and by selecting it and dragging it, we can remove it from the toolbar. We can, as well as doing that, we could let's say move it. Hold down the shift key, move it from one place to another. Let's put it in there. So that's provides some means of customization. Let's go back to the beginning and just try it once more with this time. Let's remove one item. Now when we double click on the toolbar, we get the Microsoft Customize dialog with all the buttons which are already there and the one that's been removed. So we could put that one back in and select the position there, add it, and it goes back to where it came from. So that provides a degree of customization for the user. Now as soon as we have that change of order or different content, then we understand that we need to feed that back into the program in order to restore it later. And so there is also an array called here button order, the order of the button, which appears when is required when we use the option adjustable, and it's an extra argument here which we've provided. Now that order is initially being set to -1, and that basically means use the default order to start off with. But then as we run the program and the user changes the order, then the new order will be fed back into the data which is described within the program. So as we create the window twice by going around the do loop, we find that the second time round the order has been fed in. So let's see how that works is by running it. This time we'll remove a particular button in that way. It's still there, but it's hidden. Close it down and then run it a second time, and you see that in the second time it stayed removed, it's hidden, but double click and there it is, it's still there, because the order data has been fed back into the data for the program and restored when you run it again. So we could put that back in at this point, just by adding it, and we're back to where we were. Naturally, if you would want to save that between one run and the next in the final version of this program, so you've saved that data to some file somewhere and restore it when the program starts again. So there we go, that's the hidden state. Also, you might be wondering about the arrow button. Let's have a look at that. If we start it, run it, and look at the arrow button here. If I click on that, then you find a menu's come up. Now that's a menu which is available in the program, provided in the program. So you have the facility to use that drop down arrow. How does that work? Well, let's look at the code. First of all, I've provided for a handle for the toolbar. The %MB is followed by LC with picks up the window handle of the toolbar. That is actually in shared data and comes into the callback. Now the callback has all of these different reasons which are now available, but one of those is MB dropdown, which is the notification that comes when the user clicks on the down arrow. With that, the program generates a temporary pop-up menu, and it uses the format code %NW, which stands for new window, but it's actually an existing window in this case, with the handle for the control, which is the toolbar. That means that we can add a pop-up menu to the existing toolbar, and that's just a temporary. It's arranged so that that's just a temporary toolbar, a temporary pop-up menu, so that you could have multiple drop downs. You can have more than one in your toolbar, because each time it just creates a temporary menu at that position. And then you see you've got new callbacks for each of the menu items in that pop-up menu, and there we've got our callbacks at the bottom there for the drop down. So as we run it, and then we'll see that we can click on there, select an item, and there you find that that's the report coming back from the relevant callback function. Right, so that's gives us all of those basic facilities, and you see that the whole thing is actually a lot more powerful than anything we've had before, and basically makes available almost all of the features that you can get in the Microsoft toolbar control. Okay, so that's everything, and that's all that we can show you at this point. So just a quick review. If we use this new %MB, then we end up with a toolbar which has many useful facilities, and we've illustrated all of those here. Okay, so that's it for now, and enjoy these new facilities, and thank you for listening.